When Jason Tatum crumpled to the hardwood in Game 4, clutching his leg and grimacing in agony, it felt like the curtain call for the Boston Celtics playoff run. A ruptured Achilles tendon doesn't just take a player out of a game. It rocks a locker room, shatters rotations, and threatens the psychological fabric of a title contender. Tatum, the Celtics' cornerstone, their all-NBA talisman, was gone. The team, trailing 3-1 to the New York Knicks in the Eastern Conference semifinals, looked to be circling the drain. And then, Game 5 happened. Behind an electric TD Garden crowd and a fusion of desperation, grit, and inspired performances, the Celtics responded with a resounding 127-102 win. It wasn't just a stay of execution. It was a thunderous declaration that this team, Tatum or not, is still in this fight. Celtics now trail 3-2 with Game 6 looming in hostile Madison Square Garden. But after their Game 5 statement, the series narrative has flipped entirely. The pressure has shifted, and the Knicks know. Let's break down how Boston pulled off this resurgent performance, what it tells us about their identity without Tatum, and why this series could now be teetering toward a historic Celtics comeback. When Tatum went down, it was more than just the loss of 26.9 points, 8.1 rebounds, and 4.9 assists per game. It was the loss of a leader, a clutch time closer, and the primary shot creator in a system that leans heavily on individual offensive brilliance. For Coach Joe Mazzulla, whose tenure has often been criticized for tactical rigidity, this was a moment of reckoning. Would the Celtics fold without their star, or would they finally prove that their depth, so often cited as a strength, was more than just theoretical? Game 5 answered that question emphatically. Let's start with the myth. No, he didn't drop 30. He didn't sink a game winner. But the 7-2 center, cast as a fringe rotation player for most of the season, put together a performance that will live in Boston playoff lore. Kornet's stat line: by 10 points, 9 rebounds, 7 blocks. The 7 blocks set a franchise record for most in an elimination game, surpassing anything done by Celtics legends like Bill Russell or Kevin McHale. What's even more remarkable, he did it in just 24 minutes of play. Defensively, he turned the paint into a no-fly zone. Julius Randle, who had bullied the Celtics on the block in earlier games, was visibly frustrated. Kornet's length and timing disrupted entry passes, erased drives, and dissuaded even mid-range floaters. He didn't just protect the rim. He psychologically occupied it. It was the type of performance that alters series trajectory. Kornet, long seen as an energy big, became a fulcrum around which Boston's defensive rotations hinged. While Kornet was the spark, Derek White was the flame. White's 34-point explosion, fueled by 7 made threes, was arguably the finest playoff performance of his career. He played with surgical precision, striking a balance between shot hunting and play facilitation. He also defended like a madman, chasing around New York's perimeter threats and switching onto bigger bodies when needed. What stood out most was the calmness with which White operated. With Tatum out and Jaylen Brown struggling early, White didn't try to play superhero ball. He let the game come to him, and when his number was called, especially from deep, he delivered. Celtics finished 17 of 38 from 3, and White's 7 bombs were the foundation. With spacing critical in Tatum's absence, White's gravity kept the Knicks' defense honest, opening up driving lanes for Brown and Peyton Pritchard. Joe Mazzulla hasn't had an easy ride in Boston. His inexperience has drawn criticism, and his over-reliance on isolation play has often made the Celtics predictable. But in Game 5, he showed tactical flexibility many thought he lacked. 1-1. Smaller, faster rotations. With Tatum out, Mazzulla leaned into a pace and space style, giving more minutes to quick guards like Pritchard and Sam Hauser. The result was a faster offense that moved the ball well, punishing New York's weak side help with sharp kickouts and extra passes. 2. Defensive traps on Brunson. Jalen Brunson had eviscerated Boston's defense in the previous 2 games. In Game 5, Mazzulla threw early traps at him and blitzed him on high pick and rolls, forcing the ball out of his hands. Brunson still scored 28, but his influence was curbed significantly, especially in the second half when New York began to unravel. 3. Trusting Kornet. Most importantly, Mazzulla let Kornet play through mistakes. That trust paid dividends, especially in the third quarter when Kornet's rim protection fueled a 16-4 run that essentially broke the game open. It wasn't just tactic, it was attitude. Boston didn't look like a team facing elimination. They looked like a team proving a point. Jaylen Brown, who finished with 22 points and 8 boards, took on a leadership role. Al Horford, the 38-year-old veteran, brought poise and spacing with 2 timely threes. Even bench players like O'Shea Brissett brought hustle, grabbing loose balls and contesting every shot. There was belief. That was the biggest difference. Teams facing a 3-1 deficit rarely play free and confident basketball. But Game 5 saw Boston smiling, high-fiving, moving with swagger. They played like the better team, and for 48 minutes they were. The Knicks, meanwhile, looked tight. Julius Randle reverted to his inconsistent playoff self, struggling with efficiency. Brunson, despite the 28 points, committed 6 turnovers and looked exhausted from the defensive attention. Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart combined for just 14 points, and Mitchell Robinson was outworked on the boards. There's a mental burden to being the team up in a series, especially when you're suddenly getting blown out. The Knicks knew they had a chance to close it out. That they didn't, on a night when Boston was without Tatum, could plant doubt. Game 6 now becomes a pressure cooker. If Boston wins and forces a Game 7 back at TD Garden, the momentum will have fully shifted. Historically, Historically, 3-1 win the series just 430%. Now the Celtics want to etch their names into that history. They've already become just the 14th team in NBA history to win a Game 5 down 3-1 by more than 25 points. And with Tatum officially out, this team has rallied behind the next man up ethos. Here's why Boston has a real chance to force and win Game 7. Depth advantage. Even without Tatum, Boston can roll out a playoff caliber 9-man rotation. New York's bench has been inconsistent. Why defensive ceiling? With Kornet anchoring and White wreaking havoc at the point of attack, Boston can suffocate New York's offense for stretches. Will momentum shift? Game 5 wasn't a fluke. It was domination. The Knicks now know Boston won't go quietly. Want Jaylen Brown's efficiency? If Boston is to win in the Garden, Brown must be the alpha. He needs to assert himself early, attack mismatches, and stay engaged defensively. No more drifting in and out of games.
4 chỗ vuông ở 4 góc này vào, rồi làm đôi cho hình chéo nha mọi người. Đây mình gập đôi này. Mọi người gập vào mọi người nét để cho nó vào nét nha. Rồi bây giờ mình sẽ gập như thế này. Rồi mình sẽ úp lại để mình gập làm đôi nha mọi người. Gập làm đôi và mọi người biết cho mình. Rồi mình lại tiếp tục mình gập. Mọi người cứ gập đường nào mọi người biết đường đấy cho mình để tạo nét cho nó. Rồi bây giờ thì mình sẽ lồng như thế này nhé mọi người. Đây, mình lồng hai cạnh này vào nhau như thế này. Đấy, mình đẩy hai cái bên này vào. Đó, như vậy thì mình sẽ được một cái dạng ống như này nhá. Ống có 3 mặt này, ống rỗng hai đầu là hình tam giác như này nhá. Đấy. Bây giờ thì mình sẽ cắt rỗng cái này nhé mọi người. Cắt rỗng cái đường này ra để tạo thành cái lỗ rỗng của cái đèn nhé mọi người. Cái đèn lồng ấy, nó vào cái chỗ rỗng thì cái ánh sáng nó mới phát ra được. Rồi mình sẽ tháo ra này. Mình sẽ cắt như này nhé. Mình sẽ gài lại cái này, gài lên rồi mình lại cũng tiếp tục là mình vẽ. Mình sẽ cắt cả hai tờ. Đây, mình sẽ lồng vào như thế này. Rồi bây giờ mình cũng vẽ lên hình như thế này. Bây giờ mình tháo ra để mình cắt nha. Rồi mình cắt tương tự như này. Rồi bây giờ mình sẽ lồng vào nha. Rồi mình sẽ được một cái lỗ rỗng như này nha mọi người. Đó, mình được một lỗ rỗng này. Bây giờ mình sẽ dán cái đáy cho nó nhé. Mình sẽ tận dụng cái phần bìa ban đầu mình cắt cái hình vuông ra mọi người. Mình cắt hình vuông ra thì sẽ dư cái phần này. Mình sẽ tận dụng nó để làm cái đáy của cái đèn. Thì cái đèn của mình ấy nó sẽ đang có hai đầu rộng đúng không? Mọi người dùng đầu nào để làm đáy cũng được. Hai đầu y hệt nhau luôn. Dùng đầu nào cũng được nhé. Bây giờ mọi người sẽ dán keo vào. Mọi người dán keo vào cái mặt đáy này cho mình. Rồi mình áp xuống. Mình ấn nhẹ nhẹ thôi nhé. Tại vì là cái này nó cũng chỉ là giấy bìa đấy, chứ nó không phải là bìa hẳn, nó là giấy bìa nên nó cũng không cứng lắm đâu. Mình mạnh tay quá là nó sẽ bị móp ấy. Vâng, bây giờ thì mình sẽ